Hi everybody. I thought we'd have a bit of a live stream tonight, so I hope you can all hear me well. I'm just going to bring up my comments. Bear with me a sec so I can see you all. Hopefully you'll all come up on my screen. Hopefully I'll get this right tonight. Unlike last time where I seemed to totally fail at using a live stream, but there we'll go. So tonight I've got a few different things that are going on. We've got two little chicks here to feed. We've got a young buzzard chick on the right there who's just waking up, having a little stretch. And that weird looking pink thing on the left there is a barn owl chick. And it's time for their evening feed. And then if we come over here, we've got a goshawk that is on his way out at the minute. So hopefully by the time we've started to feed these guys, he will start to finish off his hatch, so hopefully we'll get some interesting action tonight. But I thought we'd start with these two, so if you bear with me a second while I sort these guys out. We have to give them a bit of a feed. They're just waking up. There we go. The barn owl, there we go, he's waking up. He knows I'm talking about him. He is about 4 days old now, so he's still very tiny. If I put my hand in, you can see how small he is. And then on the right here, this buzzard chick, he's 3 days old now, I think. So he's hopefully going to go in with his mum tomorrow. But we will see what's going on here. Hello, you're hungry. Hello to everyone joining us. It is lovely to see you all. Right, we'll bring the noisy one out first. This oh, can you get a boot boot? There's a boot boot from me, and I hope a little boot boot back to all of you. This little chap here is pretty adorable in his own way. I mean, I'll be honest, he is pretty ugly. They kind of grow into their beauty, these guys, and he's got this crazy little hiss that he's giving us at the minute. This is a barn owl food call, so everybody thinks about how these guys, you know, they're sort of owls. We typically think about hooting, but a lot of barn owls screech. Sorry, a lot of owls in general screech. He's not angry with the world. This is his food call. And you can see if I put my finger here that he's just basically reaching out to eat. So what I've got here is a nice little mix of mince and chicken. He's been on mouse and chicken. He's been on just mouse and rat for the last couple of days, and I'm just mixing it up a little bit for him. So he's getting quite good at eating now. I'll just sort this out. I'm trying to do this with one hand, so please bear with me. There we go. So at the moment he can't see. You can see his little eyebrows that he's got going on here, and his little eyelids which are shut tight. His eyes will open when he's about 10 days old, so he's got another week really, just using his hearing. Now owl's hearing is super good. Thank you so much for the super chat there. Oh, you're amazing. That's very, very kind of you. This little chap here, at the minute, is just a food machine, so he is really designed to consume food and grow. He's not really aware of much of the world going on around him at the minute. No, they don't eat any seeds. These guys eat solid meat, and the parents spend absolutely ages sort of tearing up the nice bits for them to eat. Now, when he was born, his head was the size of my thumbnail, so he was super tiny. I mean, it's not a lot bigger now, to be fair. He's about twice the size he was 3 days ago, so he's grown a little bit. Yeah, it is a pretty disturbing sound, that hiss that he makes. Now he's got a bit of food in him, he's a little bit quieter. We'll just let that go down. So his food, just like us, goes straight into his stomach. So his little tummy in here, which is pretty full at the minute. There we are, chap. His food goes straight down. For the other birds of prey that I feed, like the buzzard chick, which you'll meet in a minute, he's got a crop, so the food goes into there instead. And once he fills his crop up, he would then push that down into his stomach to digest it. So they have a sort of a two-way digestion process. But for owls, it's all straight down. So the food's hitting his stomach and he's starting to think like, okay, maybe I'm not as hungry as I was 2 minutes ago. There we go. He does look a bit like an alien, doesn't he? He's shivering a little bit, but he's not cold. It's just adrenaline because he's just really excited because he's getting his meal, basically. But this little chap is a very lucky barn owl for the reason that his parents are just absolutely rubbish at breeding, which is fine because we don't need lots and lots of barn owls in the world. However, she's a prolific egg layer, but she forgets to sit on them. Yeah, it's about 10 o'clock, well, 10 p.m. in England at the minute. So yes, his mum lays lots of eggs, but she doesn't sit on them and they go cold. And to top it off, the dad's not very good at doing the dad's job, for me to keep it polite on this channel in case we've got kids. But basically, they're not very good at making babies. So a lot of the eggs end up infertile. So she just lays lots and lots of eggs, which isn't too great, which she then tries to sit. And because she laid so many eggs, she can't sit on them all, so she can't keep them warm. I went to check the eggs, which probably was the third clutch she's laid this year, which is ridiculous. It's a bit problematic really for her. And she has basically, I checked through the eggs. They all looked infertile, and then I found this one little egg here, which was this chap. And it turns out one was fertile. So I popped him in the incubator to give him a chance. He's not got a name yet. I'm sure you guys will come up with something suitable or mental. Aldemort, the little owl that you named from the last live feed, he is fully grown now. He's still in with his parents, and I'm just waiting for him to be moved on to his new home. He's going to be paired up with a female who's lonely because she's lost her male last year, so we will get them paired up very soon. His eyes will open on day 10, so in about a week's time. So he's blind at the minute, but he's got very, very good hearing. And remember, for a lot of owls, they rely heavily on hearing over eyesight. So he's not too fussed at the minute. I'll just find something to balance this. Bring my hands up a bit. Oh, what's the owl on Zelda called? My Zelda knowledge isn't very good, I must admit. Here we go. So this little twitter he's making now is because he's full. What amazes me is this tiny, tiny little talons. It's hard to appreciate just how small these talons are right now. He is a baby common barn owl. You'll find barn owls on most continents of the world, amazingly. And our barn owls aren't quite as big as the American barn owl. Yeah, he's a bit of a plop. Anyone who's watching from the UK will remember the story of Plop the baby owl who goes exploring. He is a plop. And he's basically just falling asleep now. So he's having a little bit like a human baby, his pre-sleep twitters. He's having a little fuss, but he's actually, he's just getting super tired because eating is hard work. And you can see how full his, oh, sorry, mate. You can see how full his tummy is there. He's very, very full, but he's a little grump. He doesn't seem very big at the minute, but in 6 weeks' time he will be a fully grown barn owl, and he will be about ready to fly. He'll be looking to fledge. So you have to appreciate, you know, this is only a few days growth, and in a few weeks' time he's going to look very, very different. I'll just pop you back in your box. Let's go get the other chap out. We'll pop him back in the warm, don't make him cold. So he'll be in the brooder for another couple of days, and then he will go under a heat lamp so you get a bit more fresh air. So we have this very funny little looking frog who is not an owl. What's the long black thing? This is an egg candler. It's basically like a big high-powered torch, so I can see inside eggs, in case you're wondering what that is. This little chap here is a common buzzard chick. He is the third chick to hatch, the third and final chick. He has just woke up. He'll wake up in a minute. Are we hungry yet? He's still waking up. And he's only a few days old. His oldest brother, so the first chick that hatched about a week ago, because remember there's about 3 days between each egg hatching, sits about this high. He's about 4 times the size of this chick. So in the wild, this little chick here really wouldn't survive because his siblings would get all the food, and you get a lot of problems of death between siblings, because whichever chick is the strongest is the one that is going to get most of the food and survive. And unfortunately, if you're born last, you are off for a pretty rough start. He has got the best little fuzzy hairdo. It does look like he's been electrocuted. He styled it himself. This is probably my favourite stage with these little chaps. They are probably at their cutest, and then they all get a little bit serious. But he's a common buzzard, and here in the UK we see a lot of them. They are doing very, very well. There we go. Now his parents and the other buzzard chicks, their parents, they were first time parents this year, and anyone who watched the video I put up recently will remember that he actually, his sibling, which was put in with the buzzards, didn't go very much. Thank you, Angel, that's really kind. And the problem we had is that the mum didn't recognise that the chicks were hers. Thank you, Alexa. The babies are eating chicken and mouse today. So the buzzard chicks unfortunately couldn't be put back under their parents, which is really frustrating but understandable, because when we're helping these birds to work out how to breed, it becomes quite a challenge, because they don't always work it out in 1 year. It's taken them 3 years really to sort of even get to the point of laying fertile eggs. Yeah, I think buzzards in America is a little bit of a confusion. So I know what you call your red-tailed hawk, we actually call a red-tailed buzzard. And I think again there's a crossover between what we call vultures. So it's a little bit confusing. We are waking up now. There we go. So this buzzard chick can't be released into the wild because he's captive bred. So the rules in the UK around breeding mean that if something's bred in captivity, it can't be put into the wild, quite simply because we would be messing with the wild population. So you can't take things out of the wild, which makes sense, and you can't put stuff back into the wild. However, when those populations crash, it's the fact that we have a captive breeding stock, which is what gives us all that help. So in this country, the peregrine numbers massively dipped at some point in the 70s. I might have that slightly wrong, but due to DDT poisoning, and it was due to having a captive stock of falconry birds, which helped to establish those numbers. It's falconers that helped to establish them. So this little chap is going to be flown and hunted, so he will learn to hunt and fly just the same as a wild buzzard, but I can't release him into the wild because unfortunately A, he's not going to understand how to survive, and B, it would be illegal basically. So I hope it makes sense. DDT is a drug which is given to animals like cattle, and basically obviously these sort of birds scavenge and eat meat that's on the ground, and if it contains that DDT, it can poison them. So it's something that vultures, if anyone knows about vultures, are massively suffering with at the moment. You're very sleepy tonight, little man. Thank you, Mr. Aid. Boop boop to you. I'm moving at the end of July. A little moving update. At the moment, the aviaries have just started to be built, and once I get rid of these chicks back to their parents, once I'm not having to feed them 4 times a day, I will have a chance to get back up to Warwick and basically do a bit more work on the aviaries. So we're pretty much ready to go, with the exception of just getting the aviaries up now. But if all goes well, I will be moved within the next 8 weeks, which seems like a long time, but really isn't when you've got to get these sorted. Yeah, this guy is a buto. So buto is common buzzard. So in America, your probably most well-known buzzard is your red tail. You want any more? It's like having breakfast in bed, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good question about captive bred birds in the UK and their genetics compared to wild birds. Obviously, they are a little bit different to wild birds, but they still retain their wildness. They're not domesticated like cats and dogs. You know, they're still very much wild animals, but they're not wild in mentality like a truly wild bird of prey, because they've never known the wild. So in some countries, falconers fly wild birds, but in this country, we rely on a captive bred stock for what we fly. Lots of people have been seeing red kites today. Anybody in the UK, it has been a super sunny day and it's been really ideal for kites and buzzards today. It's not uncommon for us to see probably 15 to 20 in the skies at any one time around here. Lots of buzzards and kites together, especially out in the fields. They're even down looking for worms, looking for carcasses. They're pretty lazy birds to work with. I've been flying buzzards for a few years, and if anything, they're super stubborn. You're falling asleep. Hey, he's full. There's some chicks in the background, some chicken chicks. If you can hear some of her tweeting, that's what's going on in here. I've got a heat lamp set up behind me. Oh dear, we are falling asleep. He looks pretty lovely, doesn't he? I'm just going to pop you guys down a minute because I'm going to need both hands for this. I'll just pick him up and have a little look at him before he goes back in the warm. Oh, here we are. So at the minute, he is just a big bundle of fluff. He's pretty sleepy now. They look pretty floppy, don't they? He just like human babies, really. They just go to sleep. Like food off you. But he is just sort of full of this very, very thick down at the minute. He's in the brooder, he's at about 30, what's he at the minute? 34.8 degrees, so pretty warm in there. He hatched at 37 degrees. But he is about ready really to sort of drop the temperature sort of down to more about sort of 25, 26 degrees because we want to get him back used to sort of the room temperature. At the minute, he is designed just to keep super warm with that lovely thick down, but in the next week, he will start to get little bits of feathers growing through. So he has got a little bit of growing to do yet. They have absolutely beautiful little faces, these. I think the buzzards and the eagle chicks are by far some of the most beautiful. He can lift his head, he's just asleep at the minute. Come on, little one. We'll pop him back in his pot. There we go, mate. It is a hard life being a little baby bird, let's be honest. So their food doesn't need to be warmed up, because remember I'm feeding raw meat. It looks pretty gross, doesn't it? I keep it cool in the fridge and I just sort of let it hit room temperature, but I don't warm it up because it would start to cook it. And birds of prey cannot eat raw meat, unfortunately. Sorry, cooked meat. I've been filming today some of my Falcon's free flying fuel, so I'm hoping that will go up in a couple of days' time. And it's quite amazing, you know, we've been quite lucky this summer to be able to share these little baby birds with you, but of course it's not all about baby birds. You know, for me it's obviously following that through, and what start off with these strange little alien creatures obviously turn into full-grown birds, and we need to fly those. So we're getting to a good time of year, so I've started to fly some of the falcons, and you're going to see that all very soon on the YouTube channel. And then obviously we'll be following into our hunting season, so you'll be able to see them progressing. You are on a wriggle today. There we go. The buzzard is totally flat out asleep already. Poor little bugger. Ah, yeah, there we go. Thank you, William. Yeah, the buzzard in America usually refers to the black vulture or the turkey vulture. It all gets a little bit confusing, doesn't it? So a good question as well about rewilding birds. So yeah, if a population was to crash, how would we rewild captive birds? Basically, we use a technique which we call a soft release. We call it hacking, and you might have heard of that term before. But basically, we would put up a food station with a little hut on top, basically somewhere safe for the birds to be, and we'd feed the birds on those stations. And over the course of a few weeks, or however long it takes, we would reduce the food slightly. And basically what happens is the birds get hungry because they think, oh, I'm only getting half rations now. And then they basically will start to get fit as they're flying around and learning the area, and they'll start to chase things and start to catch things. And you keep reducing the food down, and the birds find their feet and start to work out how to feed themselves. So we use that with rehab techniques with wild birds of prey to get them fit, because what we don't want to do is to make sure that we don't just release a bird that's been mended physically into the wild but hasn't been allowed to get fit again. And a lot of sometimes at sort of rescue centres, you'll see that a bird will be treated for whatever injury it's had, but it's just sat still in an aviary or in a sort of some sort of care unit until it gets released, and then you launch it out of a box and go, hooray, it's free, but it hasn't actually got any fitness. And that's where falconry comes in, because we can actually get those birds fit again. I do sometimes rehab birds. These two, I say, are captive bred birds, so they won't be released into the wild, and that's just with UK law, that's the way it is. But I do get quite a lot of tawny owls in, which get hit by cars. If it's depending on the time of year as well, sort of January, February time, I get a lot of things like barn owls, which struggle to hunt in the really harsh conditions, and they get very, very hungry, and they get sort of close to starving, and that's when people find them on the floor. So often, if it's a case of lack of food, we can send them on their way quite quickly. If there's anything serious, it's off to a very good avian vet that's not so far from me, or if it's a long-term thing, usually to one of my friends who deals with a lot of rehab very regularly. So I try to avoid too much of it, because obviously I've got a lot here anyway. But of course, if there's a bird that needs help, I will be there. They're both in food comas. This barn owl is next level, flopping over his bowl. Right then, we'll have a little look and see what's going on with this egg. He's about halfway. Oh, there we go. So this is the Goshawk chick. It looks pretty messy in here, and I've not been in here and touched this egg. This chick is of all of its own doing. He's been at this for about 45 minutes now. He's about halfway. It looks a little bit bloody towards the bottom, and that is probably just where he's hit a bit of one of his own little blood vessels. So on the inside of the egg, there's blood vessels everywhere, and they're all basically sealing off. They're shutting down at the moment. Now, I don't want to rush this. We'll let him come out when he's ready, but he's, by the look of it in the minute, I can see he's breathing away in there, but he's just having a bit of a breather, because he's been out on it for about an hour now, making his exits. He'll probably have another little rest, and then he will push on through and get himself hatched. And this is just a little, very, very simple hatcher. So it's very humid in there, which keeps everything nice and damp and stops him drying out in his egg. And obviously it's quite nice because we can see in, and that's at about 37 degrees in there, so it's pretty warm. In the incubator, if they're in the incubator first, they're a little bit warmer. We probably run them at about 37.3, and then we drop it down a little bit as they hatch. So yeah, good question. How do we check that they don't hurt themselves? They don't tend to hurt themselves on the shell, because there's a little bit of a white membrane. You can probably just see it under the blue shell, and that's what's touching them. The only thing you have to be a little bit careful of, or watch for them, is that they don't end up injuring themselves by hitting their actual blood vessels, and that's a bit worrying, but it's very rare. I must admit, this chick has been a little bit unorthodox. Initially, when he first pipped, so where he first tried to break through the egg, he came in far too low. He didn't actually get into the air cell, which is the empty space where the oxygen is. He came in just in the lower section where he's encased. But no, that's not going to bleed to death. He's not actively bleeding. There's just a little bit of blood there, but that's not uncommon inside the egg. Yeah, you can see the chicken. Sorry, you can see the membrane on a chicken egg just the same. But he's basically. He's kind of sussed it out. It took him about 24 hours to find the right place to actually start, and then he's been working on this most this afternoon. Oh, he's having a wiggle. There we go. You can see him in there. It looks like he's had a bit of a wake up. Do I eat eggs? Yeah, I eat eggs, which seems strange, doesn't it? Because I deal a lot with eggs and chicks and things like that. I am a meat eater. I am somebody who believes in balance in all things, and I know where my food comes from, and I'm happy to eat things, and I'm happy to eat meat. That's just my choice, and it really is down to the fact that I can control where it all comes from. So my chickens lay me eggs, which is nice. I don't think I'd ever eat a goshawk egg. That seems pretty weird. Fable's asleep at the minute in her aviary. She's tucked out. I have thought about doing a live stream with Fable one evening this week if the weather stays nice. It's due to rain very, very hard tomorrow, which is a bit annoying. But we've had about a week and a half of very hot weather, or at least very hot if you live in England. It's been about 78, 79 Fahrenheit, which isn't that hot, but it's hot if you live here. We're used to the rain and the cold. It's pretty amazing, really, how things hatch. It never ceases to amaze me with eggs that, you know, from the start, that tiny bit of DNA that appears in that yolk can turn into a whole chick inside there. It's pretty amazing that, you know, an egg is such a simple structure and it's able to grow a chick just from some very, very tiny little bits of DNA, which I think is pretty amazing. It never ceases to amaze me, really. This chick's taken 36 days to hatch. So the owls generally take about 31 to 33, and then these goshawks can take anything up to 36 days. They're a much bigger chick, they've got a thicker shell, so it's a much longer, more epic process, really. Yeah, I feed eggs to the raven. I usually give her any chicken eggs that I can't eat, because my chickens go through sort of stages of laying 1 or 2 eggs and then 7 or 8, and I cannot eat 7 or 8 eggs a day. I'm not not that good. So some of the birds that eat eggs, they can have eggs. No, the COVID hasn't really affected anything. I was a bit worried I might not get food supplies because I order in a lot of my meat for the birds. I have wild caught meat that they've caught in the winter, but I supplement that with things like rodents, which I buy in, so I know that they're clean. And it's luckily this COVID nonsense hasn't actually affected the birds. That's what I was really worried. If I was going to panic buy, I'd be panic buying bird food. I wouldn't be too worried about myself. Yeah, goshawks have been worked with falconers for thousands of years. The goshawk's probably the ultimate bird of prey for a lot of falconers. They were known as the cook's hawk, and essentially because you can go out with a goshawk and you'll catch something, anything from rabbits, pheasants, pigeons, anything that's edible, squirrels. They will eat everything. So when you're looking back into history, a goshawk's really the ultimate bird for filling the pot. This is before guns. Once guns were invented, falconry died out for quite a while, and thank goodness in this country it was probably the Victorians really that brought it back. They're pretty eccentric, so falconry had a bit of a revival, but certainly when guns came around, falconry was pretty obsolete, really. Hello in there. So I'm really excited about this goshawk because he is the first goshawk out of this particular pairing. The dad I got about 3 years ago, and I would consider him a rescue. He came to me in a real state. He had no feathers on his head, a big old scab on his head. He'd smashed himself up in an aviary where he'd previously been. His beak looked like a finch's beak. It was really, really short because it was broken. It hadn't been looked after. He was just generally in poor feather condition, and I took this bird on knowing that he'd be pretty crazy because he's a goshawk, but didn't really know how he was going to turn out. However, under that horrible looking bird initially, was actually a really, really nice bird to work with, and he has become a wonderful hunting companion, but also educational bird. So he will fly in front of hundreds of people without even blinking, and then in the winter he will go out in the hunting field, and he's a very, very prolific hunter. So he's a really, really wonderful bird to work with, and he's really opened my eyes up to how amazing goshawks are. The female, she's also one of the nicest female goshawks I've ever worked with, which is why I'm hoping that the young that they've managed to breed should turn out to be really, really quite wonderful chicks. I don't know if you can hear him tweeting away in there. Poor little so-and-so. So when I talk about educational work with birds in this country, some people will think about watching falconry on display at fairs and things like that. I used to work with someone called the National Trust, which deal with all the historical sites in England. So I used to do sort of demonstrations for a few years and fly birds for people to come and watch. But last few years I've really been working in a centre environment, so people come here for sort of one-to-one encounters with the bird and they get to fly with them. which has been very, very rewarding work. And it might seem a little bit like, I don't know, like a bit of sort of a show, but it's not, because it's very, very important to get you guys up close to these. It's one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel. I really wanted to sort of connect people with birds of prey, because when you read about birds, it's not the same as seeing them. And you know, I get to live and breathe this every day, and I never really thought to share it. And I when I get people connecting with birds of prey, it's amazing how emotional it is. And then when you see those birds in the wild, you can understand what you're looking at, and just how amazing they are. I'd love to go to America and see Cooper's hawks in action. I'm quite jealous. They're pretty amazing birds. And I've never seen one because we don't have them over here. It's hard keeping up with all your questioners, I must admit. You're all over it, guys. Yeah, I have peregrines. Peregrine falcons are one of my favourite falcons to fly. They are absolutely incredible hunters, and even to fly them to a lure for exercise is just amazing. And so I've been recording my falcons over the last few days, free flying for you to the lure, and that video should come out in a few days. We just need to get a little bit more footage so you can enjoy it, but I'm really looking forward to showing you the speed and the agility that the falcons have. Falconry is a bit of a dying art, really. But the last few years over here, it's really picked up. So it's quite nice to see so many people having a new interest in it. I think he's having another little rest in a minute. Oh no, having a wriggle. That thing at the bottom that you can see wiggling is his beak. So basically what he's doing, it's a little bit like a can opener. He's working his way around, he's turning a little bit, and he's pushing his beak to break the shell open. He's about halfway at the minute. But he's probably got a little way to go. See if I can pop you down there. There we go. It's better. Prop you up. Brilliant. Oh, The Raven Master by Chris is a great book. I'm still reading it at the minute, actually. If you're looking for books on ravens, out of interest, a bit irrelevant to what we're doing now, The Mind of the Raven is one of my favourite raven books, and it talks about ravens in America. And if you want to understand all about ravens and their mentality and the way they work in the wild, it is just the ultimate book. I think you can get it on Audible as well if you like listening to audiobooks. Good question, Shelley, about regulation and lost birds. Lost birds of prey, it's less common than people think. We don't let the birds of prey fly free until we're ready and that we know that the birds are ready. I don't just sort of lob the bird in the air when I think he's a bit hungry and hope he'll come back. We take the time over weeks to sort of work through the training and make sure that we've got some good recall and that the bird understands what we're asking of them. I found, certainly in my time working with birds of prey, that the bird is much more likely to be spooked by something you can't control in the environment. So, for example, I might be flying my hawk somewhere he's flown every single day, but a tractor appears out of nowhere that we're not used to, and then unfortunately that might spook him. So being aware of your environment's good, but it can be quite hard sometimes because you can't control what's going on around you. In the UK, basically the way we hunt is a little bit different. So again, in America, your process is slightly different, but here in the UK, if you want to hunt with a bird of prey, you will be walking on somebody else's land, so you have to ask. So everywhere we go, we have to ask for land permissions. So when people ask about becoming a falconer in this country, one of the most important things is knowing that you've got somewhere that you can go. There's no point buying a bird of prey and saying, I'm going to fly this, if you've got nowhere to fly it. So it's really important to get land permission. All land in the UK is privately owned, so you always have to ask somebody to be allowed on it, basically. But I'm looking forward to this hunting season very much, because it's a few new birds to sort of fly this year, and one bird in particular, my big Chilean blue eagle, black-chested buzzard eagle, which you've seen on a few videos, big grey eagle. I want to get him hunting this year. He's 3 years old, he's never hunted before, so one of my tasks this winter is to get him going. Hi Livy, Livy's online. if you watched the recent video, remember Livy looked after the tawny owl for me before it went up to Scotland and did a wonderful job of imprinting it, which means we're sort of rearing it. Otherwise, I would have been dealing with that little naughty owl, but he's very much happily installed up in Scotland in his new home, and he is pretty much about ready to fly now, so the falcon's just trying to get him going. Yeah, I'm going to be doing some hunting videos, it's an interesting topic, and I appreciate that we've got a massive audience, lots of different people, but I'm really looking forward to hopefully showing you how the hawks hunt and how the view is from the falconer. I'm going to have to get a bit better at using a GoPro, but I'm going to work on it, and I think it will be really interesting to introduce you all, because the thing that I love about about falconry the most is the fact that it's a bit like bird watching, but it's a bit more extreme. You know, we're being pulled into that bird's world, and especially when you're flying a goshawk like this little chap, when he comes out of his egg, he will become such a tenacious hunter. You will see things that you just wouldn't see in the wild. You know, in this country, there's probably over 600 pairs of goshawks, but they're in recovery, so their numbers got down very, very low, and they're still trying to recover their numbers, and they're sort of very limited to where they will live because they need certain types of landscape. Really, they're like very big sort of forested areas. They need certain prey to be around, and so you don't get to see them hunt, but as a falconer you get to see the process, and you get to see the things that actually you would never otherwise get to see. So, and to have that chance is so wonderful, because the birds decide that you know, that we're allowed to do that. So they're allowing us into their world, which is pretty amazing, because at the end of the day, you know, we're free flying these birds. If they don't want to stay with us, they won't come back. It's that simple. So they actively make a decision, and they are very intelligent birds, so it's quite nice to you know, be allowed by them, really. I have massive respect for these birds. Ravens, what time do they hatch in the UK? Ravens hatch in sort of around March time, March, April usually. So there'll be lots of young ravens flying around. We've got 2 wild pairs of ravens sort of within the sort of local estate where I fly my birds, which is really nice. We sometimes see 1 pair flying over the farm. I must admit, Fable absolutely ignores the ravens. She lives next door to another pair of ravens that I look after, a rescue pair. But even when she's out and about, she's got no interest in them at all. So she just tends to hang around people or bother people, or basically just be a nuisance, really. Go off and do her own thing, find things to steal, and anything that's potentially food. So usually biscuits and things like that. She's more interested in that than hanging out with other ravens. Also, I must say thank you to everybody who sent in little entries for the competition for Fable. I'm also going to start filming those soon. I've had some amazing different ideas for toys and puzzles for her, so I'm sort of starting to film those bits with her, and I'll compile all that. We'll give it a couple more weeks in case anyone is sending something in for her, but that will happen very soon. You can hear some noise in the background, which is some chicken chicks. They're not as exciting as this goshawk chick. So what age do we start training the birds for hunting? We start off, well, most of the time we'll let the parents rear them, so that will typically take the bird to between 10 and 12 weeks, for some species a bit older, 16, 17 weeks, and then after that, that's when we begin training. So as soon as they're ready to start flying, when they've naturally fledged in the wild, so they're a full-grown teenager if you like, that's when we start to train them. So as they're learning and growing, we will introduce them to everything that they need to learn about. Someone's just asked me about if I've had any experience with jackdaws. I have a friend up in Scotland who has the most amazing jackdaw. His name is Quentin. He's on Instagram. I think if you search Quentin the jackdaw, you will find him. And he's a wild jackdaw that she rescued, that decided he would never return to the wild, and he just flies around her farm and steals ferret biscuits, and basically is just a very big monkey. And he's about 4 years old. He might be a bit older actually now. I've met him a few times. Thank you very much, Shelley. And he is just amazing. So if you want to see any more sort of corvid content, hop across to Instagram and check out Quentin. He's amazing. He also speaks a bit. He likes to say his own name, a bit like Fable likes to say her name, which is pretty cute. But he's much naughtier than Fable. If you walk along, he'll like to stab you in the wellies. As you're walking along, he stabs your shoes, sits on your shoulder, stabs your ear. He's just a total monkey, but that's Corvids for you. Yeah, I keep chickens as well. I've got silkies, those little white pom-pom sort of chickens. They can't really fly. They mostly just run around on the ground. And the birds of prey have never had a run-in with them. In fact, I had a big old English game chicken that used to, or cockerel, that used to just walk between the birds when they're sitting out on the lawn. And I think he knew how close he could get, but they were quite amused by him. He's pretty mental. Oh, thank you, Livy. Yeah, Quentin the jackdaw is about 7 now, so he's even older than I remember. Shows you how time goes. I must admit, I'm running on about 5 hours sleep a day at the moment, so it's lucky if I know what day of the week it is. Thank you very much, Kim. That's very kind of you. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. I think everybody should get to watch Goshawk's hatching. He's having another snooze, I think. He is getting there. Yeah, anyone who's kept chickens, silkies are just the best little birds. They're very, very broody as well, and they lay some lovely little eggs. So there's a good question from Peter here. So when you're hunting your peregrine, how do you ensure it doesn't catch the wrong sort of bird? For example, a protected species. So obviously as a falconer, it's down for us to try and orchestrate the hunt as best we can. So I need to have an idea of where the quarry, where the prey is going to be. And I should, I basically, that's where my dog comes in, because she's able to point the right species. She doesn't point everything, she points the things that she's been trained to point. But like, I guess a search dog is trained to search for certain things. So I can be confident when I ask her to flush something that that's going to be the correct prey for that falcon. If you're looking for other falconry channels, check out Falconry Told. It's an American channel, but they do some really, really nice videos about falconry. So if you want to get a bit more in depth with the hunting side, I really would recommend that channel. But yeah, remember at the end of the day, when we're free flying these birds, especially when they're hunting, they make all their own decisions. That's what I find amazing. We're a bit of a passenger, really. It's up to them to decide to chase the right thing, and occasionally they go off after something else, which usually ends up in them losing out, because we will set something up good for them. But if they choose, I'm going to go chase that pigeon that's 3 fields away, that pigeon's going to be long gone by the time they catch up with it. So generally we'll oh yes, Ben Woodruff, thank you for whoever just suggested that. It's zoomed off the comments. He's worth watching as well. He's a very interesting American falconer. Why did I choose that breed of dog? So the most common, or one of the most common falconry dogs we use here in the UK is the German short-haired pointer. And so that was my first sort of hunting dog, if you like. Thank you, Ian, that's really kind for the support. So I've now got my Spinoni as well, which you've seen, the little pup, which is another HPR, but generally the HPR breeds are the ones we're looking for. Can you get a makeshift raptor if you tie a cat to the drone? I guess you would. That'd be a pretty horrifying experience for everyone, I think. Yeah, falconry is legal in most countries. However, it isn't legal in every country, which is quite interesting. Often it falls foul of other things that are going on. So other laws get changed, and that essentially can stop falconry. So it can be quite a complex task. But certainly in the UK, yeah, here in the UK, we can keep non-native birds of prey. We've got quite a lot of sort of freedom, really. But the rules are that we can't lose them. So if they go for a wander in the wild, it's up for us to get them back. You can't release non-native species into the wild. Do you hatch and breed to meet demand requests from other falconers, and then have to follow a natural breeding season? So yes, obviously, because we breed captive bred birds, they have to go somewhere, so they do go to other falconers. However, I don't breed a large number of birds. The birds that I breed from are birds that I've flown and that I keep, so it's only a very small number. And those birds just generally get rehomed with friends who are looking for birds. I would much rather not let the eggs hatch if there's no home for them to go to, if that makes sense. So it's important for us to breed some of the birds. So to breed a clutch of 3 or 4 goshawks is really good, because every year there's going to be people needing birds. But it's all about responsible breeding. You know, it's not financially viable. If I work out how much money I spend on the food just to feed the parents all year, these guys only breed once a year. So it's not like chickens where they can hatch and lay and rear all through the year. We're looking at 1 or potentially 2 clutches of eggs over a whole year. There's only one breeding season, which starts from sort of February, March and goes through to sort of July, August. So depending on the species, they'll hatch at a certain time of year, but you get one chance. So if these goshawk eggs, for example, didn't work out, then I'd have to wait another year. So it's quite a big thing. Thank you very much, Todd, for the support. I really appreciate that. You watched a carrion crow arranging seaweed and shells the other day, like artwork. Ah, yeah. I must admit, has anyone watched crows or ravens in the snow? I've seen them sliding down the roofs of houses in the snow. They're the most playful birds. It is pretty amazing, really. And yes, I will be doing a live stream of Fable at some point. I'll have to catch her in a good mood. If she's in an antisocial mood or she's off doing her own thing, she's pretty useless. Thank you, Mac. I'm really glad. I'm watching from Norway and Germany. That is amazing. It does amaze me. I may be a little bit of an old fogey when it comes to this, but it amazes me how many of you are from all sorts of awesome countries across the world, and we can all share this. It really is so cool, especially at the minute we're all stuck inside. Is it hard to earn a living as a falconer? Yeah, it is, because it's a lifestyle, really. I was a web designer once, many years ago, and honestly, I should have really just stayed being a web designer. Anybody with animals knows that you put all your money back into your birds or your animals, and it only takes one vet bill to sort of knock you sideways. So you know, I do this for the love of it. It is my lifestyle, it's my life choice. I've worked with birds most of my life, really, since my teenagers, and you know, I will continue to. You know, I can't imagine not being a falconer, but there are days when I do wonder why I'm doing it. Yeah, falconry started somewhere in Asia. Certainly the Mongols played a part with falconry. We don't actually know when falconry started, but in the UK it was the Vikings and the Saxons, really, that grew falconry. And amazingly, in Norway and Denmark, they were climbing down the cliff faces to take gyrfalcons out of nests. You're talking thousands of years ago, and they were trading with them with the Saxon kings over here. So they were part of a sort of a royalty sort of present. You know, these foreign amazing big gyrfalcons. They're one of the largest falcon species, big white falcons, very powerful. You know, falconry is ingrained in a lot of our cultures. And what I find wonderful is it connects a lot of people. So you can go to any country in the world, but if you're a falconer, you can very soon talk to another falconer. It gives you a massive sort of shared culture and love. It's quite incredible, really. He's having a good old wiggle in there. Have I flown eagles and other larger birds of prey? Yeah, I have worked with a couple of eagles. I'll be honest, they're not my main cup of tea. They are huge and they're heavy and awkward and stroppy, and they're just, for me, falcons is what really excites me more than anything to work with, because they've got sort of the perfect balance of intelligence and speed and agility, whereas eagles are sort of big bomber planes. You know, they just go one direction very powerfully. But I've been out with friends eagles and they are just stunning to watch, hunting and flying. Thank you, Amy, that's really kind for the support there. Oh, he's going. Are we coming out yet? Oh, we've got some viewers in Scotland. You're staying up late like me. I've no idea. It's probably about 11 p.m. here now. Can I show you the golden eagle? I don't have a golden eagle, but I have a friend with a golden eagle. In fact, he has a few golden eagles, and I'm hoping this winter that he might come and do a bit of work on the channel, so you guys can meet his eagles. he's not shy of the camera, and it is pretty cool watching those guys hunt. But the best place to watch eagles hunting is Scotland, because if eagles need one thing, it's lift and hills. Where I am here, oh, thank you, it's just about 11 o'clock in the UK. Yeah, here down south, we don't really have any hills to speak of. It's super flat, so flying an eagle down here would be pretty pointless for me, because I'd never be able to get the bird up on the saw properly. It would be quite hard work. So for me, if I was living in Scotland, I'd definitely really want to work with an eagle. But at the moment, there's very little point. But falcons here, I can get a lot of lift with them. They can get up in the sky very quickly. Oh, your best incubator for less than $200. Most of the incubators I use are Grumback and Brinsea, but you can get some nice little Brinsea ones like this. This is a little Brinsea incubator which you can incubate your eggs all the way through. I just use it to hatch the eggs in, because I have a much larger Grumback machine for most of the early stage stuff. I think he's gone for another little sleep. 5 p.m. in Texas. Oh, that's a much better time than 11 p.m. here. Hello to Angela in Essex down the road. Yeah, this is technically what we call a finished goshawk, a proper goshawk, if you will. Falconers are super nerdy, just like most lifestyle choices and sports and fanatics. We get quite pedantic about sort of the subspecies of these breeds, and you know, even with peregrines, there's lots of different subspecies of peregrine. So when you say this is a peregrine, it's like, well, what kind? So people are the same with goshawks. But for me, the two parents that I've bred this goshawk out of are my perfect idea of a goshawk. So to me, they're perfect. So how much shell do the birds need to peck in order for it to hatch? So basically, you can see there's bits of shell all over the floor. He has been particularly messy. They're not normally this messy. But he is basically working his way around the whole edge. So if you imagine like when you draw an Easter egg sort of popped in half, that's what he's trying to do. So he's about halfway, sort of basically started up here, and he's been working his way around. He's pushing his beak against the shell, and he's basically pushing his way out, and he's got to go all the way around really, or most of the way. But I'll be able to see what's going on soon. If he's getting tired, then I will be able to help him out if need be. I have seen the film The Eagle Huntress. Yeah, if you haven't seen that, you absolutely should. It's about a young Mongolian girl and her quest to become an eagle falconer. And it is pretty good. It's quite a wonderful watch, in very different landscape to the green fields of England. Thank you, Chris. It is pretty mental being up at all hours, but as I'm awake anyway, I thought I might as well share it with all of you rather than just watching myself. Thank you for the support, Mark. I'm hoping this little chap will be out in the next sort of 15 minutes, but it's all down to him, I'm afraid. So we could be here a while, but we can't really rush him, unfortunately. I say we can give him a help if he needs it, but it's quite important that he does it in his own time. So there's a few different things going on in that egg at the minute. Obviously, the chick's working his way around. All the little blood vessels are sealing off, so that there's no more blood flow. And then he's got a yolk sac, which is basically a little bit like a big chocolate bar, which is drawing up into his belly button. And basically that yolk sac needs to be fully retracted inside him, because that will give him lots of energy and nutrients. But he doesn't want to hatch with that still out. Otherwise that's going to cause me and him some serious problems. So I've got to let it all happen. It's all happening at the same time. And if we rushed him out now, just cracked him open, there could be a good chance he's not quite ready. So as you say, he's up for a bit of Netflix and chill at the minute. Has Fable learned any new words? I don't think she has at the minute, or not that I've heard. But she's constantly listening, and she does come out with stuff all the time. Oh, I say is her sort of favourite thing at the minute, which is what I'm hearing at the moment a lot of. Yeah, he's a little bit tired at the minute, the chick. He is having a wriggle. I think he'll probably give it another go in a minute. I can see him having a bit of a movement. At the minute, his wing is up at the top here, and then his beak's down at the bottom. So where you can see that furthest point of the crack at the bottom, that's where his beak is. So he's been working his way around. Yeah, I can intervene if need be, but we're not quite there yet. He's doing all right. I've got something as well called an egg buddy. I can show you it here. So it looks very odd, but this basically, I can pop the egg onto here, and it actually will give me a readout of the chick's heartbeat, so I can see what's going on without actually seeing inside the egg, which is really cool. It's one of my favourite sort of tools to use. So sometimes you get an egg where they haven't pipped. It's not like this chick working his way out, just nothing happens, and you think, this must be about time for something to happen here. And I can pop it in the egg buddy, see what the heart rate's doing, see what the movement's doing, and basically understand if that chick's having problems. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's a tool that really, without, I would probably have lost a couple of chicks, because you just wouldn't know that they're having issues. Netflix. God, you guys are better than me. I'm definitely not a comedian. So what point do they take their first breath of air? That's a really great question, Greg. So initially, before they work their way on the edge of the egg, they actually have to work their way through the membrane on the inside. So as they get ready to hatch, the membrane draws down as the chick grows, and it leaves a big air cell. So you can see some pencil marks up at the top on the right hand side there, and I've drawn those sort of in the last sort of 10 days as that air cell has grown, because that gives me an idea of where it is. So when the chick starts to pip through the internal membrane, they basically get into that air cell. That's when they start breathing, and they've got about 72 hours at that point, really. I help them out by drilling an absolutely teeny tiny hole in the top of the air cell. So as we look at it on the right hand side, top of the egg, I put a little hole in just to let continual air flow in, which helps them out a little bit more. And then it's all down to him. You can see at the bottom there at the minute, that little bit that keeps poking out, that's his beak, as he's working his way around. Yeah, we draw all sorts of weird and wonderful things on the eggshell, little arrows and circles. Thank you, Devon, nice to see you. And we basically, the more I can sort of do on the egg, it sort of reminds me what's going on. It also means that when I can see where the air cell is, that if the chick pips too low, again, I can see if there's any problems happening without having to take the egg in and out of here, because every time I open this up, the humidity changes, and that can dry the chick out. So it's important that I leave it in here as long as possible, to give him the best chance. If I was fiddling around with the egg all the time, I would really affect its ability to hatch. He's giving a good old wriggle, isn't he? Yeah, so to Ramalama's question, that yeah, they can sometimes hatch a little bit early, or they can peck into a blood vessel. They can also be breached, so they can try and pip out the bottom, and they can get their head stuck under their wing. They can be too big and they can't turn in the egg. It's an absolute nightmare. But I must admit, this year I've had a really good season. I've only had one chick that I've had to help out, which is the tawny owl chick. Everything else has hatched itself really well. If I turn around to the other side of the egg, you can see it's just blank at the minute. It looks like a normal egg. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate your support there. So if I can come to the top, this is where he started to pip, and then he's made a big old mess, and he's working his way around on this side here. So he's got a little way to go. If he can get about halfway, I'll give him probably about 10-15 minutes, and then I will have a little look, and we'll open up the shell and just see what's going on, because he's about there really. But it's a hard balance, like I say. You don't want to intervene and cause a problem, but equally we don't want the chick to get too tired, because he will be pretty exhausted at the end of this. And basically then, once he is hatched, I will basically leave him in the brooder to dry off for the next sort of 3 or 4 hours, and then I will give him a feed. So at this rate, it'll be about 5 a.m. probably, that I give him his first little feed, and he'll just have probably a couple of mouthfuls at best, and then he'll basically, because he'll still be using his yolk sac up then, and then he'll basically have another feed sort of 3 or 4 hours after that. With the eggshells, yeah, it's a good question, Humdrum. Basically, I keep the eggshells for DNA testing. I supplement my laying birds if need be. So they're on what we call a whole carcass diet anyway. So they're getting lots of calcium and minerals and everything they need. Often in the wild, when chicks hatch, the parents will eat the eggshells because it gives them a bit of calcium back. But I make sure that they've got a good balanced diet. I use the membrane on the inside of the egg for DNA testing, so I can work out if it's male or female. This chick will go back in with its parent. So the buzzard chick that you saw me feeding earlier, that chick, they will be going in with a mum tomorrow. I basically just get the chicks going for the first couple of days, and it really, really helps. It gives them a greater chance of survival because they're strong enough to beg for their parents. For anyone that's just joined us, this is a baby goshawk that's hatching. Draw funny faces on the egg. Very good. He is a little tease. I don't know what's got into him. Not a lot of them in it. It's very hard to predict how long they take. Some of them just zoom round. Some of them have to be a bit of a drama queen about it, which is obviously what this little chap's doing at the minute. But trust me, I'm as excited as you guys because this is a first out of these two parents for me. So I've been waiting quite a few years for this chick to happen. So it's very exciting. Nice to see you, Jonathan. Take care. All the way from Austria. Oh, I've been to Austria. It's a very, very nice place to go. He is shy. I think goshawk's probably one of the birds that, certainly over here in the UK, everyone sort of gets a bit of an itch to want to fly one. Most people will start by flying a red tail or a Harris hawk, typically, although some people start with falcons. But often people sort of see the goshawk as the Ferrari, so they sort of fly another type of hawk or buzzard, and then they think, oh, I wish I could fly a goshawk one day. But they are very, very high energy birds. They're very, very intense to work with. They see, well, we sit about 30 frames a second, and they see over sort of 200 frames a second. So their reactions are just incredible. But it makes it very, very intense. Have I ever been scared around a bird while working with it? Oh, hell yeah. I used to work with a Goldie, well, he was a golden eagle hybrid with a steppe eagle, so he's a crossbreed. If you think like your dogs, you get your labradoodles and things like that. And he just used to look through you. Honestly, he was looking into your soul. I did not trust that bird one bit. And not that he was aggressive, he was just super scary. He was just such a big, powerful bird. I've met some incredible birds. A friend of mine works with some very big eagles, and she's got an absolutely stunning Marshall eagle, which I got to hold for 10 minutes. And trust me, that doesn't seem like very long, but it's an incredibly heavy bird. And she probably was one of the most intense birds I've ever just been close to. And amusingly this year, Liv, who pops up on the channel here, she got herself a new Harris hawk, which was bred out of the previous Harris hawk that she flew. So she flew a male for a long time, and then he had babies, and she now flies his son. We were training him, and we joked when we were training him that he was more like a goshawk than a Harris hawk. So typically Harris hawks are fairly laid back to work with compared to goshawks, but this little Harris hawk was probably the most tenacious Harris hawks I've ever been near. And he sort of had us laughing and screaming all at the same time. He was an absolute comedian. He probably is embarrassed 700 people watching him wriggle out there. Poor little bugger. I've never worked with a condor. There's a couple of places that have condors over here, but very, very few. I do know one chap that I did meet his condor when it was a baby. I say baby, it was absolutely huge. But for me, I have to have birds that have a job. So I don't like anything that's a garden ornament. So I'd never just get a bird just to have one, if you like. So I wouldn't say, oh, I'll get a condor because it'll look really cool. It would just be impractical. So it's really important that all the birds that I work with, get to free fly, and that they all have a job, whatever that job may be. I'm really strong in my left arm because we always carry the birds on the left. I am sort of one-sided strong, so I do everything with my right hand, and my left hand does all the heavy lifting. So I've got a messed up back, basically. How many people do you have to help with all your birds on a daily basis? Pretty much no one, to be honest. Most of the time it is just myself, as incredible as that might seem. Before the COVID, I had a couple of volunteers, my main volunteer being the awesome Simon, who's in tomorrow, finally. He's in a position where he can come back and help out. But I've actually, for the duration of the coronavirus situation, I've just been on my own. So it has been pretty epic. But I've largely worked with my team on my own for most of the time I've worked with birds, and I've just had volunteers over the years that come and go. But Simon has been one of the most reliable volunteers I've ever worked with. He's absolutely brilliant. Bird Armstrong. Oh yeah, and I'm really glad that some of you found Craig's channel that I recommended. Craig will be living about 20 minutes from me when I move, actually, and I'm looking forward to going over and playing with his parrots. That's not a euphemism. I'm as much as I've worked with birds of prey all my life, I've always wanted a parrot, but never been able to justify it. And certainly having ravens means that I've got enough of my time taken up by needy birds. But I'm hoping to go over and do it, the collab with Craig in the autumn, and meet all his parrots properly. I know some of you have popped over to his channel to have a look. In this incubator, it's about 37 degrees at the minute, just under. So it's pretty hot. Do birds sense your fear like other animals? Yeah, they do. And interestingly, you know, the birds are very, very sensitive. If you've ever ridden a horse, you'll know how sensitive horses are to your emotions. Craig's channel, by the way, is called Craig's Crazy Flock. That's a mouthful. Birds are very sensitive. If I'm in a bad mood, I know I shouldn't ever do anything clever with a bird because it's only going to go one way. So yeah, they do test you, and when you're training new birds, they'll often try and do a little bit of a lunge at you with their head, a bit like a dart forward, just to test to see if you jump. And if you jump, they just think, brilliant, I can bully this person now. So you have to be very calm around them, very steady, and show them that you're just not fussed by them. And then they very quickly settle down, because of course the most important thing to remember with these guys is that we can't just bully them. I can't make the birds do anything. I can't bully them and say you must do this. You know, you can tell a dog off and it understands because it's in a pack environment, but a bird of prey is at the top of the tree, quite literally. You know, they are super, you know, super dominant, and they just do their own thing. Oh, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Alexandra, for your super chat. That's super kind of you. It is amazing how much support all of you guys are giving. I really am. I know I've said this a lot, but I really am overwhelmed. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be able to share all this sort of stuff with you. So to have so much support from you is just absolutely incredible. I did also train some of my birds to work from horseback. That was pretty intense. There's nothing like sitting on a prey animal with a predator. You find that certain horses don't bother at all, but they're not too fussed. But other horses aren't really too keen on giant flapping birds between their ears. He's having another rest. He is being epic, this little goshawk. I will upload this live stream as well, so if any of you pop off at some point, then you will be able to catch up on the rest of the stream. Thank you, Alex. How soon after hatching will this chick be ready to feed? Probably about 3 or 4 hours, and he'll be sort of good for his first feed. However, it depends. Some chicks are sort of begging for food very, very quickly. Other chicks, they actually they take a few hours. They can survive really 12 hours or so just on the yolk sac itself. So you don't have to worry too much about them eating foods. Oh, thank you, JJK USAF. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I can get all that in. That's very kind of you to support the channel. He is definitely dragging this out, isn't he? What I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to have a very gentle look at what is going on. I'm just going to move some of the shell back just to give him a little bit of help, because what I don't want him to do is to get too tired. So we can have a little look and see what's going on. we doing here? I'm just going to move a little bit of this away. You can see what's happening here. Make you dizzy doing, mate? What I'm going to do is just bring this out a bit. A little bit of room. I don't want to open up too much because I need to see what's going on here. He has had a bit of an epic hatch here, to be fair. I think, probably, let me have a look at what time he pipped at. I think he pipped about 4 PM, so he's been 48, so he's for about 55 hours now, something like that. He's pretty epic, really, to sort of be working away. Thank you, Karen, for supporting the channel. Oh, got a wing there. There we go. I'm not going to just whack him out open. I'm just going to say, just peel it back a little bit. You can see the membrane here. Give me some grumpy protests. Hello. The other thing that we mustn't do is basically stretch the chick out. So when he hatches, if you've watched any of the other chicks hatch, they sort of curl up in a ball as if they're still in the egg, and you want to let them obviously work their muscles themselves. So you don't want to sort of open the chick up and make him stretch his legs. You know, he will do that when he's ready, but he's doing fine. This is all just bits of eggshell, and then you can see the membrane here. In a minute I'm just going to have a quick look to make sure his yolk sac's retracted, because I can actually have a little look down just under his head there and I'll be able to sort of see what's going on. But he is pretty epic. Oh yes, Peter, just on time after 72 minutes. It was very hard for me to work out when this chick's going to hatch, to be honest, but we just have to sort of play it by ear, see what's going on. I'm just going to move the camera slightly to give myself some room. Do not panic. Oh. Right, just bear with me. Let's see what's going on here. I'm going to take him off screen a second just because I need to be able to see what I'm doing, but don't worry. What I'm basically doing at the minute, I'm just checking to see what's going on. It looks like he's pretty sealed up at the minute, so basically, let's pop him back a second. You can just see him now. I've got a beak here. Here's his eye. I'm going to get a high-powered torch so I can see what's going on. I'm awake at all hours at this time of year. I don't get much sleep. So I've just got a very strong torch. I'm just going to have a look, see if I can see any of his yolk sac still. I'm just taking off screen. I appreciate it's not the most exciting, but it's just important that I have a look. He's looking pretty much ready to come out. His little vessel. So this is the membrane here. And you can just see, if I bring it a bit closer, there's some sort of very vague pinky lines. So that's the vessels that have shut down. I don't often have to do a manual hatch, but I think he is just pretty knackered. If the membrane's dry, which it isn't in this case, you can see it's very, very soft. I'll just use a paintbrush with some water, and we just gently dab at it, and it just wettens it so that it's not all dry, which helps a little bit as well. This is his wing here, and his beak. He's upside down at the minute. Yeah, can we slow down the hatching? It depends if we can sort of stop the chick coming out of the egg, so I can put cling film over the top with a few holes in, which sort of acts like a little membrane and slows him down a bit. But sometimes they do just hatch themselves a bit early, so it's just it's important to sort of go at their pace, really. I'm just sort of helping him out a little bit here. But the key is not to rush. If you rush, that's when things go wrong. So I know there'll be people thinking, God, just get him out of there. But there's absolutely no point in us rushing. Let's see what we've got going on here. Okay. What a mess we're making tonight, mate. The mum does help them to hatch. The most interesting thing I've seen Goshawk parents doing is breathing on the eggshells, and they basically increase the humidity, so if the chick needs help, which is pretty incredible. But a lot of the hatching is down to the chick alone. Oh, sorry there, knocked you over. The yolk sac is basically attached to the chick at its belly button, and that is there to act as like a big food parcel for when it's hatched, to keep it going for sort of 12-15 hours until it's ready to be able to start feeding. So that's got to retract really before the chick's in a position to hatch. Have another little check. He's just gonna basically I'm just using an little cotton bud just to try and see under the belly button without him coming out. I know, mate. It's a bit of a British thing, isn't it, calling a goshawk mate? Pretty sweet. But what I can see here is that the blood vessels are all nicely sealed off. There's no more blood flowing around, which suggests that we're about right. I'm just going to release his head a little bit. It's amazing actually when you look at it, because you appreciate that the egg is just filled up of chick. Not much else. Let's just move this out of the way. Swing this around with a bit of a clean surface. Right, sweet. I'm just going to let him come out in his own time here. But we look like we're totally sealed off in there. She's lovely. Hello. I'm just going to rotate him slightly. What I'm just checking for, I know it looks like I'm just fiddling away, is that I'm making sure that he's all sealed off underneath with his yolk sac. I'm sorry I'm not seeing your questions in a minute. I will catch up in a minute. Ah, good, we're there. I'll just pop this back on. Keep him warm. It's like something out of Alien, isn't it? Oh my goodness, guys, you asked me so many questions. I have to try and do a follow-up video to this so I can answer them all. Google the goshawk. He is pretty much out now. I basically just put the hatcher cover back on just so I keep him nice and warm. You can just see his nice little feet here, and those tiny talons are about 1/4 centimetre. They're so tiny. He's at about 37 degrees in here, so he's pretty warm. No, he's not particularly susceptible to bacteria. My hands are clean anyway, and I keep this room disinfected. I wash the floors down, everything gets sprayed, the surfaces get sprayed, so he is absolutely exhausted, isn't he? He has had a long old hatch. If you also notice here, I'll use my little cotton bud to point, where his eyes are at this point and this point, That grey area is all part of his eyeballs. He's like a big goggly frog at the minute. He will look pretty, well, he looks a bit awful at the minute, but he will look a lot better when he's fluffed up. He's very, very soggy. He has been incubated because his mum would risk breaking the eggs, so I obviously value the chicks. I don't want them getting destroyed before they've had a chance, so it's much easier to pop these eggs in the incubator. And as somebody's just rightly popped out here, the goshawk who bred this, she's currently fostering my buzzard chicks, which is an absolute lifesaver, because what I wouldn't want to do is hand rear those buzzards. So she's got 2 buzzard chicks at the minute. She's probably going to get a third tomorrow, and then she's going to get some. She's going to end up with 2 goshawk chicks potentially as well. Although one of the goshawk chicks might go to my other goshawk, who is a first-time mum. So I can't really say what will happen yet, because I play it day by day, and sometimes I change my mind 3 times a day as to what's going to happen. But essentially, he will get reared by a goshawk at the end of the day. Oh, there we go. It sounds really silly because obviously, as you say, how do we introduce a chick to the parents? If it's an experienced parent, it's super easy. Basically, we just carefully take away the egg when she's not looking, pop the chick in the nest, and bless them, they basically pop along and they look in the nest and they go, I'm pretty certain I didn't leave a chick there, and then they go, okay, no worries, and they basically they sort of accept it and they just start feeding it. Remember, they're not people, so their thought processes are different, so they just know they're going through a process. He's absolutely knackered. He's just snoozing away. Amusingly, that little bit of white fluff at the top there, on his back, was the bit that was poking out of the egg as he was starting. So he actually has sort of partially dried off. So he's white and fluffy on his back, and everything else is obviously pretty gross at the moment. He's just having that little wiggle to get out of the egg. I will help him in a minute, but at the minute I just want him to stay nice and warm. I don't want to take him out too soon, but I will pop him in the brooder soon so he can dry off properly. He is just a big bobble head at the minute. Their heads are so heavy, it's pretty funny when you work with baby falcons or baby hawks. They're like little bobble heads. They sort of sit there and their head's so heavy that bobbling around from side to side, they can sort of barely keep it up at first. So they have quite amazingly strong neck muscles actually. But his tiny talons, I mean, I can't get over to you how small this chick is. Obviously when I pick him up in a minute I'll try and show you. Appreciate, I don't have the biggest hands in the world, but those little tiny feet, they're not, well, they're about as big as my smallest fingernail, so very, very small. Epic, that's a pretty good name for a goshawk. My lady goshawks, I've got 2 girls, they're called Izzy and Dora. We sort of tend to go with old lady names. We certainly never go for things that are sort of cliche, like you would never call your hawk Hunter, because you would guarantee that it wouldn't catch anything at all. So we tend to choose quite nice names for them. My 2 boy goshawks, my 2 males, they're called Dante and Elwyn. Oh, there we go, and a little wiggle. You can do it, mate. So all in all, that's a perfect hatch for him, which is really lovely. It was definitely worth giving him that little bit of help at the end. He would have got there eventually, but there's no point letting him get any more tired than he needs to be. Sometimes they hatch at sort of 3 or 4 in the morning and I'm in bed, so sometimes they just they do it all themselves. But you know, we're here tonight, we can help him out a bit, which is great. His eyes are going to pretty much open straight away, which is pretty crazy. Obviously not at the minute because he's having a little snooze, but he will actually, within the first day, his eyes will open. Goshawks and, well, hawks and buzzards in general are a lot more versatile and a lot more switched on than owls. Owls take about 10 or 12 days really before their eyes open. Oh, there we go. You got your bum out now. He is having a proper old wiggle. So I'm hatching him rather than his mum because she's currently fostering some other chicks for me that desperately needed a parent. But also she has a habit of basically getting bored in the last few days of her incubating. So she will sit on the eggs for about 30 days and then she goes, you know what, I'm pretty bored about this, and she'll come off them. Now if she does that, those eggs will go cold and those chicks will die. So it's easier for us to take on that hatching process, make sure the chick hatches, feed it up for a couple of days, and then basically we can allow them to go back in with the parents, and they can do the hard work, which is to rear them. In 6 weeks he will be fledging and flying, so a month and a half, and this rubbish little pink ball of fluff will be a beautiful goshawk. Thank you so much, Adam. Happy birthday to our little goshawk. It is indeed his little birthday today. Yeah, this is live. This is a real bird. You'd be amazed how many people tell me that my birds are CGI or that they're not real. I've even been to places and taken my birds, and they sort of think they're some kind of strange robot birds, which is quite amusing. But I really don't have time to be pretending that birds can talk, or that they're not, that they're that they're real. They are super real. He's drying off a bit. Come on then, you. You can see in the egg here, it's pretty gross, but those little blood vessels have all sealed off, and there's like that horrible gross mucus in the bottom there, but that will give us our DNA content. Come on, you. Oh goodness me. Just scoop you up, hang on a second. So for context, he is absolutely tiny. He's currently saying, put me back in the egg, I think. But like I say, there's no point sort of stretching the chick out. You know, he will relax himself when he's ready. And he'll probably have his first meal in about 3 hours time. So once we finish this live stream, I will go to bed for sort of 3 hours and then get up and give him a little feed. But it's quite amazing how quickly he will start eating. I'll just pop you down a second. I'm running out of hands here. Oh. Come on, little one. Oh, there we go. We've got him in this very nicely pre-prepared bed that I've made him. I just use old towel because it's nice and it stops him slipping around, and then I basically just throw it once I mess it. And he'll have his first poop in probably the first 20 minutes or so, which is amazing. Wakey wakey. I've got a buzzard here, living the dream. It's a bit of a rearrange, I think. So he looks pretty odd at the moment. Oh look, you've woken up for more food. I'll just pop him in here. Bear with me. You can dry off in peace. This buzzard chick is just flat out asleep. But you can appreciate it. This is 3 days old, this chick. You can see his eyes are open. That little goshawk chick behind him looks absolutely tiny, but it shows you just how big these get so quickly. These guys won't imprint. They're only a couple of days old. He will soon forget me. He'll be back in with his mum tomorrow, or his foster mum, I should say. So this he is hungry. Give him some more food. But it's at the moment for the first few days the chicks, they don't really care who feeds them. As you can see, he just wants his dinner. I'll just throw that everywhere. Barn owls are just little monsters. They've got a real desire to thrive. I get these cups from IKEA, they're brilliant. They do make the perfect little chick pots. Yep, they poop every time they've eaten. They are little poo machines, just like human babies, I guess. It's just eat, sleep, poop and repeat all the time. So this chick at the minute, he's busy throwing that everywhere. His eyes aren't open yet, so he doesn't actually know that I'm not a barn owl. So there's no imprinting going to happen at this point. Too young. So it all depends on when they go back with the parents. But for the first few days, there's no difference to whether I feed them or the parent feeds them. The difference is I can make sure that he gets enough food. He's eating chicken and mouse as a nice little baby mince. And that has all the bone in it as well, because that's really important that he gets his minerals as well and his calcium. He has been eating mostly mouse and rat, but I've just sort of been giving him a bit of chicken from today just to sort of mix it up a little bit. He's a very messy eater. You can see I'm sort of spreading this out. It seems pretty chaotic, but I can check this way by touching the food, which bits are too big and lumpy for him, just to make sure he gets food that's the right size. So it sort of makes life a little bit easier for me. He doesn't need physical contact sort of to snuggle. That's a bit of a human thing. However, when I do have lots of chicks that are the same species, so if he had siblings, then you can put them in together and they've all lie together. But these bowls are quite nice because he's basically sort of snuggling within the bowl, if that makes sense. But he was the only chick to hatch from the parents. As I say, they struggled to leave. They struggle to hatch any chicks at all, really. They're just not very good at making babies. Nothing wrong with that, but that's how they are. Oh, I should check out the Scottish. Oh, what have we got here? Oh, the Woodland Trust live feed's got a Scottish osprey nest. Anyone seen ospreys in the wild? They're absolutely amazing. I've only seen them up in the borders in Northumberland, at a place called Kildawater, but they're quite amazing. We don't keep ospreys in captivity because ospreys eat fish and they need a very important enzyme that only comes from fresh fish. So unless you live by a fresh fish farm, you wouldn't be able to keep an osprey and feed it properly. It would basically die because you wouldn't be able to give it everything that it needs. Practice makes perfect. Cheeky. It's quite hard feeding these. There you go. See how he's quieting down now. He's had his. I'm amazed he can get any more food in him, to be honest. He's absolutely bursting to the brim. Yeah, you have ospreys in America as well. Ospreys migrate massively. What I find amazing about them is that they migrate abroad. They end up in all sorts of places, but they'll come back to the same little nest site up in Scotland or up in Northumberland every year, and they'll meet their mate again, and they will travel thousands and thousands of miles. Are you eating any more? There we go. Is there a way to attract barn owls to your barn? Yeah, that's really great to install a nest box. When people install nest boxes for owls, they often think, oh, well, the owls will come now. We've given them a nice little house. Sometimes what happens is that you might already have owls in the area, and I don't mean like literally in that barn, but they might be down the road. So if you've got owls in that territory in your local area, other owls won't be able to move in because over a certain sort of area there'll already be a pair that are territorial. So it might take, sometimes it takes a year or two for owls to find that box, but also for the area to open up from a territory point of view. So it can take a while. But yeah, as Livy said, if you're after an owl box for your native British owls, then Raptor Aid do some really, really great boxes. In fact, I bought a tawny owl box of them for my tawny owls this year, which is really, really good. Could you go fishing with an osprey like you go hunting with a falcon or a hawk? Certainly, well, we have fish-eating eagles that we can teach to catch fish, but I think you would struggle with an osprey. It's just not a practical falconry bird. So although there's lots and lots of birds of prey in the world, we tend to use the same sort of 15, 20 birds because they are the best birds for falconry. There we go. We're pretty happy. Do cleaning your face. I must admit, as a falconer, my favourite day-to-day thing that I use are wet wipes. They just clean up all sorts, including owls' faces. Where have you gone? There we are. Grumpy, isn't he? He does look like a little old man. Yeah, a good question, Tom. If Fable was let loose in this room, the small ones would definitely not be safe. You know, Fable is herself a predator, and you know it's easy for us to think how cute and wonderful she is, which she is. But if she got into my chick room here, it would be absolute disaster for anything. You know, it would be fair game to her. You know, she's a predator, she's a corvid, she's a meat eater. So yeah, it would be a disaster. She wouldn't be friends with these guys, put it that way. So there we go. We've got our lovely little barn owl chick who's still twitting around, being an awkward so-and-so. Our very, very happy buzzard who's living the dream, and our very soggy looking little goshawk at the back there, which I'm super happy has had a really, really good hatch. I don't sound it, but I'm very, very excited and quite emotional about that little goshawk. It's really, really quite amazing, and it's been a long time coming for me to hatch something out of these two birds. So I'm very, very chuffed, really. I must say, yeah, definitely birds of prey are a little bit easier to rear than ravens. If you were to hand rear a raven, you'd be feeding that every couple of hours, at all hours. They are absolute dustbins. Whereas these guys, you can give them, on average, you feed them about 4 times a day, which is not too bad, really. It's sort of every 4 or 5 hours. It's pretty easy going, really, in comparison. But corvids are an absolute nightmare to raise. They just need so much food. It's unreal. Oh dear. Hello. You can see he's sort of quite switched on and looking, but he's not really looking at us. His sort of depth of perception is quite limited, so he can't see me as a clear human being. He can just see movement and things like that at the minute. The little owls are all in their new homes, except for the little owls that is being reared by his parents. They've done a really, really good job of him this year. The ones that were hand reared have all gone to their new homes, and they are basically just at the point of flying now. So they're starting to learn how to free fly with their falconers, which is really, really nice. And they've all gone to homes that I'm really, really happy with. I know all of the people personally, and they've all gone on to be basically educational ambassador birds. So they will fly for and with members of the public, so that they can learn more about little owls, and appreciate basically an owl that is very not commonly seen here. A lot of people don't really notice them at all. And you're right, Lawrence, you know, it's not good to anthropomorphise these birds, even Fable. It's good to remember, you know, they are birds, they do think differently, however intelligent. But I must admit, it's very hard not to say that these guys aren't cute, because they are pretty cute. Thank you, Jim, for your support. I'm really glad you're enjoying the videos. That buzzard, yeah, he is totally content, isn't he? Through the night, after about, I do a sort of a late feed at sort of at about 11 o'clock, and then depending on the young chicks, sometimes I do a sort of a 3 a.m. one, but after a while, after a few days really, then they can sleep from about 11 till 5 and then 11 till 6. So I do get a little bit of respite. It's just that you get a few days back to back, which is pretty epic. Ah. Yes, Andrew, of course I can give a boop boop to Duplo. That's an amazing name. A lovely little Labrador puppy. Oh, they are pretty sweet. Are you gonna be working with him, or is he a total pet? Honestly, you guys, you send me so many messages. I just got to keep catching up here. Oh look, he's fallen asleep outside his bowl now. Doesn't matter how many times I just he'll fall asleep straight back down here. Look, let's tuck you in the corner. There we go. You can see that the goshawk is already actually drying off quite a lot. He's looking that little bit fluffier, but he won't be doing a right lot until the morning, really. I'm quite tempted to keep this goshawk and train it, but I've already got 3 to fly, so you sort of have to give yourself a bit of a limit, because there are only so many hours in the day, and in the winter, when it comes to hunting season, you know, our actual light levels are very limited. So I spend all day just going back and forth, hunting with the birds and making sure that everybody gets everything that they need. He is very floppy, isn't he? We're losing him in the light. I can't really keep this door open because obviously they need to stay nice and warm. Well, I think that about does it. It is 10 to midnight here in the UK, so I think it's probably time I get some sleep. So I've got a very busy day tomorrow. Thank you so much to all of you for joining me. You've been absolutely awesome, as always. You have made such a wonderful community, so thank you very much. There's going to be a video in a couple of days with my free flying falcons, so you can see how they're getting on, which is really, really exciting. I'm going to film some again tomorrow, so we'll get lots and lots of nice footage for you to watch. Hopefully I'll be able to turn this live feed off now. Last time I managed to leave it on for about an hour, which confused everybody. But thank you very much. I will do another update with the Goshawk chick, and hopefully sometime this week I will try and do a live stream with Fable as well. So look out for that. It will be in the daytime UK wide, so if you're over in America, you may have to have a little bit of an early start, but I will try and give everybody some warning about sort of that happening. Thank you very much, Lawrence. I really appreciate that. Happy birthday to our little Goshawk. I will leave you seeing these chicks, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you very much.